Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is a new paradigm for leadership as we become more and more aware of challenges that are unique even to these times in which we're living. We have the opportunity to question what was previously unquestioned, to see what was previously invisible, and to generate new paradigms for so many of the systems that we have up till now taken for granted. So today we're going to talk about a new paradigm for leadership and look at what we have up till now considered to be leadership and how that has served or not served us. So it should be a really interesting conversation. But before we get started, let's take a couple minutes to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together. Feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, all those sensations, including the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all of those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Rosalind. And welcome to you. It's great to start off the week with you and with everyone else who's joining us. So today we're going to talk about a new paradigm for leadership. So if we're going to talk about new paradigms, first we need to explore the old, I guess, right? And so when we think of leadership, the first image that comes to mind for me is somebody charging on a battlefield and leading the troops. And it's a system that is hierarchical, that relies on a leader to guide others that are lesser in the hierarchy. It is based in certainty, an individual's certainty, an individual's position, right? We rely on our leaders to make decisions for all of us. So it's kind of a top-down situation. And when we look at qualities of leadership, we're pretty constrained to traditionally masculine sorts of qualities: rationality, logic, lack of emotionality, not working on intuition, but just the facts, supposedly, to be able to make calculations about a circumstance, to be decisive, to be right. And what we see when we look at the world is a world that has become toxic in so many ways, largely due to and certainly related to this notion of disconnection, like mind only, that is making calculations about um, the value of lives, for instance, in war. We're just looking strategically. We're not looking at the human factor in something like war. That's probably one of the most obvious places to have this conversation about leadership. And I don't know how it would transfer to this new notion of leadership that is kind of arm in arm, that is more explorative, that is more collective, where the leader, rather than being identified with their own strengths, their own personal qualities, rather than being identified with that, a leader is in service to a calling, to a greater mission. And maybe that's it's interesting, because as I'm saying that, in service to a greater mission, I can see where military people are in service to protecting and defending. And, so there's an element of it, but so much of leadership has become about ego rather than about service. And so many of our beliefs and ideas about danger and safety and what we're doing here collectively, and threats, and so much of that comes from this place of fracture, this place of disconnection, of othering. And the emergent, or an emergent version of leadership is more, if we could use the term, based on traditionally on characteristics that are considered traditionally feminine, using a whole body and being and intelligence, using the intelligence of the mind, of emotion, of intuition, of the body, of creating a unification, rather than marching onward and leading in inferiors to battle. There is a sense of deeper connection with one another, to be calling everyone into their own leadership, rather than domination and control kind of leadership, but more a collective sense of service and discovery, evolution, rather than having to have all the answers, to be able to lead in the discovery, perhaps. There's a richness in that. I had the most wonderful conversation yesterday with Nina Simons from Bioneers for an interview for Sustainability Now. And Nina Simons and her husband, Kenny Ausubel, founded Bioneers. I think maybe it was renamed about 25 years ago, but this has been more than 30 years in the making. And it's a wonderful, wonderful forum for ideas and solutions and approaches to better humanity and to better generate the connection between humanity and nature. And we just had this really marvelous, marvelous conversation based on her book, which is a phenomenal book. I highly recommend it. Nature, Culture, and the Sacred. A Woman Listens for Leadership. And we were talking about what does it mean to listen for leadership. It means to take the information rather than pushing the information, to be receiving the information and to be using that information as guidance. So Rosalind says, trying out different communication until a connection is found. Exactly, Rosalind. So prioritizing connection, prioritizing communication rather than domination and control. And so it's tipping the scales more into the direction of understanding that we're all related, and to be trying to work with that relatedness rather than with the separateness that we have been so deeply conditioned to. And so one of the things that Nina said is that so many of the women leaders that she had spoken to didn't even consider themselves leaders. They considered that, they were called to serve something, a mission. They were called into a position where something needed to be done, and they met the call. And it's very, very different. If we look at the roots of leadership in our system, we can see it. We can see the hierarchies in so many places. We can see the hierarchies even in school. We can see the hierarchies in our economic system. Where we have these kind of built-in notions that if you have more money, somehow you're better, or you're more credible in some way or another, which is a very interesting thing. So we think about charismatic leaders, and we can think of leaders who have gone wrong. It happens over and over. We've seen where people achieve a degree of power, and then there's the drunkenness with that power that comes about, and then abuses of power. And where people's integrity often gets shifted, and they become sort of a slave to that power in a way that they allow it to overtake them, that they believe their own press, that they come into believing that they're better, that they're elite, that they're or that their gifts make them somehow better, more important, more valuable. And what happens is a lack of humility, and like the ivory tower syndrome that can divert us from our initial intention or commitment. What do they say? And I don't know that I agree with this as it's spoken, but power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Where rather than serving that power, people believe it's them or it's theirs. And this gets to a conversation. Nina mentioned something. We were talking about being a vehicle for life to flow through and express itself through us. And she mentioned that in indigenous culture, there's a desire to be a hollow bone. In other words, to be this clear vessel, this vehicle for the expression of life. And we were talking about that. And when leadership comes from that place, when leadership comes from that place of service to a deeper calling, the quality of it is very, very different. When leadership comes from a hunger for power, again, that notion of domination and control, this historic, very patriarchal notion of leadership, can be exceedingly toxic. When we, I think we're called to make some new calculations, and in those calculations to include some new metrics that we've neglected for so long, like emotional intelligence. Historically, emotions, intuition, integrated intelligence have been denigrated, have been reviled as less than, as a distraction at most. I'm just flashed on Freud and talking about women's hysteria, because maybe someone is responding to some kind of horror in an emotional way. It's very, very interesting to be noticing how in this time of change, so much is changing, so much in terms of our cultural values, our what I'm calling our cultural inheritance is shifting slowly, but I do see some shifts where it used to be that if you had an emotional response to someone, you were, and I still hear this, don't be a girl about it, or put your big boy pants on, or, that it wasn't okay for men to be able to experience, let alone express emotion. Toughen up, right? And why? Because it is in being unemotional that we can perpetrate so many of the horrible violences and atrocities that have been so much a part of our culture. If you're connected, how can you do those things? I remember for years, I sat with the question, is there true evil? Like, is evil a force? And what is evil? And what I came up with, and I'm not saying it's true, I'm saying this is my hypothesis, but what I came up with was that evil was disconnection, or what made evil possible was disconnection. So being disconnected from ourselves, from our essence, from our emotions, from our fuller intelligence and awareness, that being disconnected is what has allowed for the horrible, horrible things that have been done, or that we have done to one another, whether in the context of family or governments or communities, that we allow ourselves to be dissociated. And then as a result, we can justify all kinds of horrors. Like, how could we put kids, immigrant kids, in cages? How could we permit such a thing? How could we treat people the way that we treat them if we were actually connected? And I think that that's a call for each of us, myself included, obviously, to be looking at how can we be connected in a world where there's so much input, there's so much information that we can't assimilate it in a linear way by any means. And it calls upon us, as the world is accelerating in the level of information that we have access to, the exposure to things that we have growing. It calls to finding another dimension and expansion of our consciousness and awareness, to be able to be present without walling ourselves off and creating these artificial separations that allow for such deep callousness. It's so interesting to be looking at, coming back to this notion of leadership. Perhaps the greatest strength of leadership available to us right now is strengthening others in becoming and expressing their fullest selves. Because we each, I believe, working hypothesis, that we each came here with something specific to do or be. Not like a doing, but as a being, an expression of our uniqueness. And life is the myriad of expressions. And so we get to explore our own callings, the calling to come into expression. We get to explore those. And in the process, each of us is leading the way for others also, leading with others also, to create a new field, a new awareness collectively. As we each emerge, we're making space for others to emerge. And maybe the greatest kind of leadership is living well, living our best life. And what I mean by that is living our most connected and expressed and present life. And providing an example, but not doing what we're doing in order to provide an example, but being an example that others may find inspiring and may rise to. And it's not a demand, it's more just being an inspiration. I mean, certainly we all have people in our lives who we find inspiring and who encourage us to become more of who we are. And what a beautiful form of leadership that is, right? To to have people in life that we can recognize for inspiration. And we all have that. We all have people that we can look to who are walking the talk, who are paving the way, creating more possibility for all of us to step into. And that's such a gift, right? That's leadership. It doesn't have to look like carrying a banner and charging into the fray. And sometimes it may, but my working hypothesis now is that if we can find inspiration to move into our greater expression, then that's leadership, you know, to live your life as fully connected to your essence and the emergence of your expression, your fullest expression. That's leadership. Even though you may not perceive of yourself in any way, shape, or form as a leader. So I invite us all to just look more deeply at how we provide leadership in our lives, you know, with our friends, with our family, how we encourage others rather than try to control others. It's a mutual exploration. It's not leader and follower. It's leader and leader and leader and leader. And on that note, I think that's it for this morning. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome to the rest of your day. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living. And as always, I deeply, deeply appreciate this time together and the opportunity to explore and expand ourselves and each other. So until next time, so much love to you.